Hello out there and welcome to the Three Man Weave College Basketball Podcast. Today is episode number 400. We made it, fellas. 400 episodes. Wow. Think about that. The United States is not even 400 years old, but the the Three Man Weave Podcast is, what a moment. You know, when we hit 300, I said, there's no way we're going to hit 400, surely. But Matthew, guess what? We did it. We're here, and we're talking about the Big East today. Appropriate because the new Pope, have you heard of him? American, went to Villanova, one of the schools in the Big East. Wow. How funny, Matthew. Hey, how are you? How's it going being a dad and all that stuff?
It's great, and it's even better, really. As much fun as being as a father is to see Jay Wright and the Pope intertwined on the Twitter sphere. It's continuing to show the growth that college basketball has seized, Jim, and the cultural zeitgeist. Awesome stuff. Congrats to, I guess, you Catholics out there that were fired up about that. Me and Kai are proud Protestants, Christian but Protestant. So I don't know. I guess we weren't really as dialed as we probably should have been to the conclave, Jim. But I'm sure you were all the way zeroed in there.
No, I could not care less about the Pope. The amount of jokes and stuff, people just racing to make the funniest Pope joke. God,
We've
don't
lost
care.
creativity. The as a society, our creativity is plummeting. It's really sad.
Yeah, a lot of similar jokes that were clones of each other. I just
regurgitation.
I couldn't. It's just I couldn't care about that current event. But Matt, I was pumped to finally, at long last, meet your offspring. Had a nice little beer with her.
Oh yeah, that's right.
At a local tavern last weekend. So that was super enjoyable. Got to see you and the wife. Ended up seeing Kai a little bit later as well. George is making a little appearance on the pod. We love to hear that. But yeah, Kai, we were aiming for 400, and we're done after this. Well done. The final episode.
Yeah, well, we are off next week because the boys will be in Punta Cana celebrating one of our buddies getting married. We're very excited for that, so we will be taking a break next week, but fear not, episode 401 is right around the corner. But before that, episode 400, let's do it. Big East look back. We're going to go back to our preseason podcast. Of course, that was just me and Jim, which I totally forgot about. Matt, I think, was in Bermuda at the time, so he has no preseason takes, so he can just say he was right about everything, and nobody can check him on it. So, Matthew, congratulations on that. And we're going to go through each team. We're going to talk about how they did, and we're going to look forward briefly to the future. Only 11 teams. We can spend a little bit of time on each one. And, of course, we'll finish the show with some reviews, our standard practice. 3MW_CBB. That's where you can find us on Twitter, on Instagram. Please do subscribe to the podcast and to the YouTube channel. If you're watching right now, we're live, 7 a.m. Central, usually Thursday or Friday mornings. That's when you can find us on YouTube. If you care to see us live, that's where we'll be. You can always watch videos, of course, afterwards, or catch us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, all those good stuff, wherever podcasts are found. And then finally, please do join the Discord, if you would, the Burner Discord. Right now, $6 a month. We are pumping in some off-season content, answering your questions about portals, about general future bets already. It's early May, but future market is out there, and we're answering.
We've got some in there, Kai. We've got some already. We've discussed some future bets, and yes. I highly recommend being in there because I think a few of them have already moved. That's what happens.
I've been meaning to go back and do a full sweep once again, but I have not gotten the opportunity yet. But anyways,
I can confirm I did. I caught two of them, Jim, on time. But if you're a day late in Discord chatter, I missed. I believe NC State was the most recent.
Away. Come on, don't give it away.
Well, I mean, at this point, sorry, we're trying to create a FOMO vibe for listening for those who aren't members yet. Like, oh, hey, had you been there, you could have gotten it, but even I missed it. So that's on me. But yeah, get in there. Smart people are discussing smart things. So
yes, the link to that is in the YouTube video description. Hopefully, Matthew's been putting that in the podcast description as well.
Like clockwork.
Good, excellent. Okay, that does it. That's housekeeping. That's the intro. 400th episode. Hooray! Let's get into Roots Roundup and start the show.
Let's do it. We're talking news and notes, college basketball, just sorting out what happened over the past week. Not going to discuss every transfer, but Matt, before we do, we're going to keep the house a little bit cleaner by shouting out CVB Analytics, one of the holy grails of our off-season resources.
Our proud sponsor, indeed, Jim. Again, continues to be the go-to source of all data sources for college basketball at this time of year as we're going through some of our portal breakdowns. Again, another reason to join the Discord if you have not already. But littered throughout those write-ups in terms of us discussing fit, with players going to do destinations is CBB Analytics, the shot charts. And as we start to kind of compile these teams, which many of have full-ish rosters at this point, I'd love that you can use the side-by-side player shot chart comparison. Love stacking 3 or 4 guards next to each other to see how they fit in terms of point guard, off guard, wing creators, that kind of stuff. So it's just a super helpful tool and doing it in a visual fashion with a lot of these specific shooting zone stats contextualized by competition, time of year, looking at guys, how they shot pre and post injury, how they shot pre and post insertion to starting lineup, all that stuff. I can't imagine being a coach and not using this site, but if you're a diehard degenerate fan like all of us that want to understand that level of detail, join today. Use our promo code WEAVE, WEAVE, WEAVE at sign up, get you $40 off your subscription, and I promise you will not be disappointed. Thank you, Nick and team at cbbanalytics.com.
Boom. Well said, Maddie. Okay, a couple of top headlines to discuss here. First, the ACC has cut its conference schedule down from 20 games to 18 games, basically in response to its struggle to get teams into the NCAA tournament. This feels like a distinction without a difference. I don't think they're really addressing the correct problem here. Matthew, you are a resident ACC guy as a Duke fan. The problem is not how many league games they're playing. The problem is how many non-league games they're winning. And in the past couple of years, it's been not many. They need to go win some games. That's the problem.
Yeah, better teams. I guess I sort of like that they are trying to maybe elevate some of their better teams. Some of these power conferences, as they get so big, they don't. At some point, you don't care about teams 12 through 18, right? But you do care about their top 4, 6, or 8. So some gamesmanship, I would argue. I don't mind it, but yeah, the root of the problem is if you're like the SEC, you wouldn't be discussing this, right? If you had that level of depth, this would not be a conversation. But you don't. ACC has just a different brand and a different sort of selling point as a value prop. If you kind of cobble out of those schools together than the SEC or the Big 12 or even Big 10 for that matter. So I don't know, Kai. I have no profound thoughts on this. It is interesting. I don't think, to Jim's point, it's like better teams would basically make this a non-starter.
I like it, Matthew. I didn't like when conferences moved to 20 games because I like non-conference action. I love that this is happening. Haha, kind of funny. That be careful what you wish for is basically what happened to the ACC. They've been horrible in non-con. I forgot who tweeted it. It was probably one of the CBS folks about their non-conference record over the last couple of years. It wasn't just last year. It's been pretty poor over the last 3 or 4 years. So they do have to start winning those games to make the tournament. That's pretty key. But it's smart on their point, Jim, because let's be honest, the conference has been pretty watered down the last couple of years, and this affords more opportunities for Q1, Q2 wins. So I get it. I'm for it. We move on.
Yeah, just hope they take the opportunity. Don't schedule a bunch more Q4 home games that you think are going to boost your net. No, your problem is you're not winning big games. Or play better teams. Like North Carolina got in because they played good teams. They didn't beat any of them, but they got in because they played good teams. Right. So there's a quiet lesson for you. There's also sneakily slightly less unbalanced schedules because you don't have as many double opponents that could swing that or shift it in favor or away from a team. And we're getting 2 Duke UNC games every year. So at least we do still have that.
Yeah, I like that this is sort of step 1 to the full circle destination of mega conferences are just subsects of smaller conferences in which you actually might have true round robins within those, like an East and West division, or like the ACC and the East division plays a true round robin in the West. Like that's fine. Whatever. We just rebranded it to the ACC East as opposed to, the smaller ACC of years past. Yep. I'm fine with that.
Yep. The other bit of news here, welcome to the newest Division I member. It continues to grow, I guess, replacing St. Francis University, who will be leaving after 2025-26. But entering this year, Kai's the University of New Haven. The Chargers, a quick step up to Division I. There's no all right, we're going to be up in 2 years. No, it is this year. Another school, I believe, from the NE10.
Yeah.
It's basically, the NEC is just gobbling up the NE10. It's becoming a Division I conference after being Division II, right up there in the Northeast. Cool. It almost is a 1-for-1 replacement for St. Francis.
Yeah, I did a quick research here, Jim. Per Alex Agrella, since 2008, the NE10 has lost Bryant, Merrimack, Stonehill, and now New Haven to the NEC.
That's wild. I actually thought so. I guess Lemoyne is not in that one.
Lemoyne might have been as well. I'm wondering if this is a not basketball specific tweet. This could be just football. Because the
Okay.
NA10 I thought had Lemoyne and also Mercyhurst, but I could be wrong on those 2 points too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a good call too. But hey, it's another new Division One mascot with the Chargers. I don't believe there was a Chargers in Division One,
correct.
so that's exciting. Got the Lakers with Mercyhurst, now I got the Chargers. Hooray. Coaching world. Just keep an eye on IU Indy, folks. The rumors swirling in our Discord, and I mean, really abounding. I don't think it's just exclusive to the burner, but just keep an eye on it. Sounds like there could be a change potentially made, investigation of some sort going on. Not sure if the details will come out, but the carousel may not be done spinning quite yet. So keep an eye on IU Indy, who just brought up Paul Corsaro from U Indy last year and thought they had a little bit forward momentum. So we'll see how that ends up landing. And then Todd Golden, national champion coach, gets the mega extension that he very much deserved through 2031, millions and millions and millions of dollars. Kai, what a whirlwind 12 months for Mr. Golden,
Yeah,
from the Title IX investigation to national championship to cash that paycheck.
must be nice. Must be nice to be a millionaire. Of course, we note we're the Weave. We have millions of dollars for 400 episodes. But yeah, congrats to Todd Golden. You win a national title. It's what you get.
Yep, that's well deserved. It's not just the Kevin Keats make the Final Four, get 1 year and then get fired. This is a consistent upward trend from the Gators, and yeah, very, very well deserved. Staying, I know there were some whispers, maybe like he wasn't happy about the investigation and could potentially be having some friction with the administration. This seems to set things in stone and keep him in Gainesville for the foreseeable future. So rejoice, Gator fans. Nothing in the world of recruiting. Reminder that transfers, we will do a big portal episode after we recap these conferences and after everything is fully sorted out. I mean, there's still some relatively big pieces left in the portal, one of whom, let's just discuss right now. I'll skip to this one. Malik Thomas from San Francisco got a waiver for another season. And this is notable more in the sense of the precedent that it might set rather than just Thomas specifically. Now, he's fantastic, averaged almost 20 a game in the WCC, shot 40% from three, former USC, got big time scorer. But Kai, there was no reason that he would get a waiver. Medical wise, his first year at USC, he played games from November through February, a couple minutes here and there. It was not the kind of typical play early, get hurt, sit out the rest of the season, get a hardship waiver. So this kind of opens the door for people potentially like, oh, I barely played that year. Give me a waiver. I'm concerned what this is going to lead to. But hey, it's the NCAA. They lose in courts all the time. So maybe they're just getting the L out of the way early here.
Yeah, you're smart to challenge the NCAA right now because I don't think they want any more lawsuits. They're like, fine, have another year, player X. Who cares? I guess I don't care that much, Jim. It's unfortunate, but I don't have a good solution right now to the system. You can't put a blanket over everything because some players deserve hardship waivers. I don't know. Common sense should probably come into play. But again, the lawsuit aspect of it just throws a huge wrench into it.
Yeah, I mean, at some point we've said it. I think we've been saying it for over a year. Like, it's just got to eventually get to a collectively bargained agreement where it can't be sued against anymore. It is a union that has agreed to specific rules, and you can't sue outside of it. But I don't know how close we are to that. We're pretty far off, unfortunately. So we're just going to have these one-off examples and the snowball of potentially this leading to 5 years of eligibility, which means someone's going to sue for 6 at some point. Which, are we going to have unlimited eligibility before we end up getting an actual agreement in place? God, I hope not. I would puke and probably not like the sport anywhere near as much. That's my
Never
hard and fast
graduate,
opinion.
Jim. Never graduate.
Yeah, never graduate indeed. Okay, just a little bit of scheduling news that excited us, enticed us. First, the aforementioned Todd Golden and the Florida Gators are headed to New York for the Jimmy V Classic on December 9th, Madison Square Garden, taking on Matthew, the UConn Huskies. Yes, that does account for the past 3 national titles in the sport. I think we might get a few eyes on that game. I'm going to guess the ratings will do okay for that one.
A continuation of, for all the stuff we don't love about a lot of the conference shakeup stuff, it's the more prominent non-con games. Last year we saw that for sure. I think this year we're seeing more and more of that, right? So for as much as we feel like it's shoving the mid-major opportunities to get good mid-major relevant games in the non-con, like we've had some awesome games November, December last year, and I think it's going to only continue this year. And I like to see more of them in the non-MTE fashion, like at legitimate venues like MSG or like an actual home court venue. So yeah, this is great. More of this, obviously, no brainer.
Yeah, there are a few coaches that are kind of leading the way in this. And Hurley's played some really bad home bye games, but he does step up and play really big games against marquee brands. Matt, your boy John Shire, has actually done a great job with this with Duke, playing some big games, doing a little bit of campus home and home stuff. And Nate Oates has also been a rather big trailblazer in the anybody, anytime, anywhere type mindset. And they are also playing at Madison Square Garden against one Rick Pitino and his St. John's Red Storm, November 8th, first week of the season.
Yeah.
There's also a couple big games on opening night. Madison Square Garden getting some great hoops. I mean, this one's huge. Also, just going to be fun stylistically with Pitino and Oates playing their up-tempo transition ball.
Absolutely. Potential top 10 teams. I have not done any research so far, but potentially 2 top 10 teams. I'm in. Let's go.
Yep. So we love to see these announcements get us excited in, the dog days. I basically said May is like my least busy basketball month of the season as the portals died down a little bit. We don't start previews, start writing those quite yet because we're waiting for rosters to fill out completely. So just a little bit of news, giving it to us as an oasis in this college basketball desert that is May right now. But this is when we're supposed to be sleeping, apparently, per Johnny R. All right, Kai, I will hand the baton back to you. We are going to look back at the Big East, a conference that I thought, listening back, we did a pretty good job assessing, although Georgetown fans may disagree.
Yes, I agree, Jim. That is the one team that I think you could probably say we missed a little bit on. Matthew, again, was not on this podcast preview in the offseason. He was out of the country. No fault to his own. But
I will say, just to interject, I did not have, I was fortunate to miss this pod. I'm just going through some of my Take Smith results, but betting results being a proxy for those. Not a good league for me, betting wise. So I'm glad I didn't expose myself. I think there have been some old takes exposed for me in this league. So good omission by me. Smart.
Good. Well, let's hope you're honest as we go through each team here. As Jim said, I do think we did a pretty good job not going. Maybe it was the easiest conference to predict out of all the power leagues. That's definitely true. But still, we're going to pat ourselves on the back because we're going to admit our losses as well. 5 tournament teams made it from the Big East last season. It's better than 3, which is what it was 2 years ago. But instead of a 1, 2, 3 seed, it was a 2, 7, 8, 9, 11. And that 11 was a play-in game. It was easily the 4th best conference in the country. It was way behind the top 3 per Ken Pom. It was way ahead of the ACC. So it's kind of in its own tier, its own island amongst the power leagues. No top 10 Ken Pom teams last season for the Big East, which is surprising. Just 1 top 25 team and just 2 top 30 teams. Jim, both those surprised me looking back.
Yeah, I think the perception was that St. John's was awesome all year, and they only had 5 losses. Defense was great, but they always had a little bit of a flaw offensively, so they didn't quite get up into the top 10. And yeah, UConn dealt with some injuries, some fouling, defensive issues. Marquette really tailed off as the season went on. They struggled. So yeah, it wasn't the best year for the Big East, but hey, they were coming off 2 straight national titles. We're still working on the depth of this league, especially a year after only getting 3 tournament teams. And granted, that was because of bid stealers largely. But again, you have a team sneaking in as a last 4 in type team with Xavier. And this should be, especially with like basketball budgets, not really being diluted to football with NIL and stuff. I would expect this to be a 6 team, potentially even 7 type bid league.
I agree. On the preseason pod, we predicted 6. Jim and I both predicted 6 teams, missed by 1. We both agreed that the top 5 felt pretty locky, and we agreed that Xavier was the most vulnerable team to miss the tournament. Again, a lot of people probably could have predicted that, but we definitely did, and we have the receipts to prove it on our preseason podcast. So, yeah. Anyway.
Oh, what was that noise?
That's Howard Dean.
Okay.
Matthew?
Every team in the Big East underachieved last year, except for St. John's, who underachieved in the tournament because they were so good and we had expectations in the moon. So it's just kind of funny, like, no matter what fan you are, and by the way, I think this is my favorite fan base conference, with all due respect to, the Big Ten, the Atlantic 10, the SEC. This is the like if I could pick one conference to like just immerse myself in a school or fan base or just collection of it, this is it. And it was a bummer that because literally every school last year underachieved, many of which for injuries, for coaching malpractice. And then St. John's being the lone black sheep, but that was only because of the monster they created with how awesome they were for most of the year, and then they got beat because they couldn't make a shot, and RJ Lewis took the night off in the tournament. So yeah, weird year for Big East because we really hyped this league. I was hyping this league up in my mind quietly last summer for sure.
Can I ask? Do you think Georgetown and DePaul underachieved? Technically, per KenPom,
Yes.
Georgetown actually finished below its preseason KenPom rank, which surprised me. But I would have said they were better than I expected. You thought they underachieved. DePaul seemed like a little bit of a. That's what I thought they'd be / a little bit over, in my opinion.
I guess I don't know. I think I had a little higher. My expectations of Georgetown were quickly adjusted when I saw Sorber.
Yeah.
But then him getting hurt just totally like that ruined that team. They just didn't have much depth. And like, I think the teams, to Jim's point, the lack of the bottom was weaker than it should have been. And I think if you look at, Georgetown, Butler, Providence, DePaul, Seton Hall, a combination of injuries, and I think just rosters that didn't have much margin for error, and that's I think that's the theme with a lot of these teams in the middle of the mush in these power conferences. If it starts to go sour, it can go really south really quickly late in the year, and that's what you saw from a few of these teams.
I'm not letting Georgetown off the hook because of Sorber. When he got hurt there in the 80s in KenPom, they finished 90th.
They weren't great. Yeah,
They weren't winning
agree.
important
That's a
games.
good point.
They had like that one point their wins were home versus Xavier at Nova, and everything else was like outside the top 100. I guess they got the Creighton win. Creighton was shorthanded. They were not as convincing as I think a lot of Georgetown fans wanted them to be, and it wasn't just the Sorber thing. That was not the only problem last year.
Well, let's get into the teams, fellas, shall we? Team by team, standings order is where we'll go. Starting off with St. John's. They won the league. They won this league by 3 games, which was incredible in the preseason. Hey, kudos to Jim. Picking the Red Storm boldly to finish second in this conference, that was not a common
pick
take.
them first. Pick them first.
Yeah, it was not a common take at the time. I picked them 5th, according to the preseason pod. This team won 31 games. They were great. They bat out in the second round. Looking back, though, they played one team in the KenPom top 30 all season last year. That's a shocking stat. So the schedule wasn't great. They didn't have the games, and it kind of maybe hurt them in the tournament. RJ Lewis came out of nowhere last season. We thought he'd be good, but he was the best player on that team, the All-American level player. Not Kadari Richmond, who was very good, but Jim and I both thought he was going to be very good. I called him a dark horse National Player of the Year. But it was RJ Lewis's show, and very impressive in Ejiofor as well. Jim, your take on the Johnnies last season and Rick Pitino?
Yeah, I thought there's one other team that we really hit the nail on the absolute head, and I was all the way in on St. John's, and it worked out pretty well. I talked up Zuby on the preseason pod. He was a freaking monster all season. Offensive rebounding really is kind of they built the Houston Light model a little bit offensively. Like, hey, we can't shoot, but we're gonna dominate the offensive glass. Houston fans, don't get mad. I know you could shoot this year, but that's generally what the approach has been under Sampson, and St. John's did it fairly well. Kai, I think we also talked about them just having more Patino type guys on the preseason pod, and obviously that worked out well with the way they defended. Really, really hard to score on. They kind of got Madison Square Garden back fired up. Trajectory is great as long as Ricky P's in charge. I don't know what the succession plan would be after, but he seems like he's still going pretty strong. Not as bothered by the current era, especially because they've got Repole, the billionaire, helping purchase the roster, and they've got plenty of talent coming in next year. So seems to be in great shape. Obviously, they got the overachievement, the NYC brand back going last year. So it's all good in St. John's land.
Yeah, the timing is everything. St. John's was awesome, but then to juxtapose that with a sort of sinking Big East landscape, like that just really thrust them into the limelight, not just regionally but nationally. And you're seeing with the recruiting and how much of a pull. I mean, Rick Pitino and that money was always going to have a national pull, but now I think the brand is like legit. And obviously the tournament exit, Kai, was underwhelming. But yeah, I don't know. In a month or two, like I just feel like we're going to completely wash that from our mindset, and it's like, oh yeah, St. John's heavy favorites in the Big East again, or like top 3 in the Big. I think it's wherever it goes in the next 2-3 years with the Patino runway, just like last year was like that was the launch pad season to put St. John's where people thought it could be under Patino. Like that's so no nothing else profound to say there. I think it is what it is.
Yes, another kudos real quick to Jim in the preseason pod said the defense could be elite. Hey, they're number 2 in the country, and said the offense could see some droughts and look wonky. Hey, they were number 68 in the country. So spot on, spot on. Claps to the weave. Yeah, I didn't actually say in the beginning of the podcast, but no second weekend teams for the Big East, and St. John's was clearly the team everyone expected to get there as a 2 seed, and they fell short. We'll see what Rick Pitino can do moving forward, but we'll move forward to Creighton, the number 2 team in the Big East this year. Kai, that's me. I said number 2 in the preseason. I forgot I even said that. I would have probably said someone else looking back if I didn't listen to that first. Jim and I were both very confused about the Jemiah Neal ad. How do you do, Jim? Eye test for me, I thought he was a lot better than I expected. But you look back and he shot 31% from 3. He had a 102.0 rating. It wasn't great. So Jemiah Neal and Pop Isaacs for that matter, but he got hurt, so he doesn't count. Was a strange ad, and I think, I don't know. I give him a B, I suppose.
Yeah, I think Neil had some of his better games in bigger games, which made it seem like he was awesome. And like some of the games we watched, like, whoa, Jemiah Neal's on fire. But then you look back and he had some real duds in Big East play and didn't quite have the season that I'm sure McDermott hoped for. Pop Isaac's getting hurt. I would have expected them to fall off a little bit, just not have the same offensive firepower. But Maddie Steven Splashworth had a monster season, more than just kind of like a caretaker point guard knocking down threes. He was everywhere, top 40 in the country, top 30 in the country in assist rate. That was really impressive to me. He was a major weapon, helped complement Kalkbrenner and kind of cover up for the fact that Isaacs got hurt. Zugic didn't really pan out as they hoped even after he got eligible. So I would generally call, with the context of last season, last year, a win for Creighton. I thought it went pretty well for them.
Yeah, again, it helped by the landscape, right? Like maybe if the league was as good as it was 2 years ago, we frame this conversation differently. But I mean, the Ryan Kalkbrenner era is over. Like it's every big East coach is rejoicing right now. So I think that's just sort of the tenor of but we're at an inflection point in this program trajectory, Kai, without Kalk and with the impending takeover of Alan Huss, whether that's in a year or two. So I think this is kind of a fascinating point if you're a Creighton fan. But I mean, big picture, the program support is elite. Always has been, always will be. They have money, they have support. It clearly it's in good hands, I think, with the handoff going to Huss. And, I know Kalk won't be there anchoring the defense like he has been he played 4 years, right? Like a full
he played
four
5
or 5.
He won 4 defensive players of the year and
DPO,
played 5 years.
Right. So, I mean, a fun time, I guess, interesting time. Maybe a nice if you're looking for a refresh, a reset if you're a Creighton fan, but in good hands, no question.
Yeah, speaking of the defense, we both said it can't be bad with Kalkbrenner. Well, it was the worst in his career, but it was still top 4 in the Big East. It was still top 45 in the country. The main bugaboo for Creighton on the defensive end was forcing turnovers. And Jim astutely pointed out, against top-tier competition, the defense is going to struggle because they can't make opponents uncomfortable. Well, they're bottom 5 in the nation in turnover rate. And that's been kind of a theme. And you look forward to next year, and that that roster looks pretty offensive to me. And the defense, I think, takes a huge slide next year. Of course, we won't really get into that right now. One last point, guys. Fader Zugic was a guy that everyone was talking about, including myself, about being a big impact player. I think there's some eligibility issues at first, but he eventually came or was able to play in the second half of the season. Didn't really have an impact. Not really sure that's his fault, but as usual, let's take everything with a grain of salt when we hear about European players coming over.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get every European player right. I'm sure Illinois fans are going to hurl some mud at us, but like this one, I watched the film, like he just shoots, like he doesn't do anything else. And that's pretty much what he did. He made some threes, can shoot off movement, but that's like it. I don't know. So yeah, it wasn't quite what you would have hoped for. And we'll see how, I mean, there's about to be, I think, a bunch of international commitments. That happens later in the offseason because they've got their pro seasons going on. So Kai will have a lot of international scouting to do for next season. But yeah, there are some cautionary tales to go with the success stories.
Hey, he could be good next year. We move on. UConn, number 3 in the Big East. That's right, number 3. Picked them first. I think Jim did as well. I stopped short of calling them their own tier last season in the preseason. Hassan Giara was a concern. Matthew, how do you think Hassan Giara did? I think most fans like him, but it was a concern for at least us, or at least me, heading into last year, being full-time point guard, being kind of the guy. How do you think he fared last year for UConn?
UConn has a bunch of fascinating individual player like reflection points. I mean, I think he was good, right? I mean, I don't think he was bad. I know there was some. Is he a point guard? Is he not? I think the role allocation was weird because they brought in Mahaney, and Mahaney was never what everyone thought. And so I think there was UConn had to make some pivots throughout the season. It was almost shocking to see a Dan Hurley coach team that looked invincible for 2 straight seasons all of a sudden look mortal. I mean, I thought they were not bad, but close to bad when I saw them in November. Like defensively, they couldn't guard anything. Jim was like, "What's happening with this team?" But goes to show a well-coached team, even with some young pieces. I mean, like Liam McNeely became their best player. I don't think any of us really expected that. Maybe I didn't. And they were still a possession away from beating Florida the national championship game in the round of 32. So like really, really high floor. And I don't know how the hell they continue to keep Luke Murray and Kamani Jackson, right?
Kamani Young.
Kamani Young, thank you. Come on, who's Kamani Jackson? Who am I blending names there?
Bomani Jones. I don't know where you're going with that.
But I think that was the learning for you last year, Jim. It's like the floor is really high because I think the roster took a lot of turns last season, and it still ended up being a pretty damn good year with a pretty high floor. I think that's the takeaway for this UConn. As long as Hurley and his associates are coaching, they're going to have talent, enough of it, and I think they're going to a lock to finish top 3 in this league. And I think it's anywhere from like top 5 good to top 15-ish, 20-ish. Like that's a really tight but encouraging range if you're a UConn fan.
Yeah, they finished outside the top 30, but I don't think anybody would say they were the 35th best team last year, especially with the way they were playing late. I mean, when McNeely got hurt on New Year's Day, they were top 20 at KenPom despite the Maui 3-game sweep. They came back and got some huge wins. Texas, Xavier, Gonzaga, Butler, all in a row. Baylor too. They smoked. Oh, they didn't smoke Baylor. I shouldn't say that, but the team was fine. They just had some injury stuff. McNeely being out really hurt them because I think they designed a lot of their offense around him. But yeah, you got the development from a couple of sophomores, Solo Ball being the most notable one. But Stewart was pretty solid as a sophomore, and they've seem to be using kind of the portal more to fill in spots. It's like a hybrid between the Marquette don't use it at all and the completely build your team around the portal. They're just like, all right, what role are we missing? And sticking in Demery, I think, makes sense. And it seems like that's what they're going to continue to do going forward is recruit hard because their retention's really good. People want to be there. I think they've got the money to pay them. And then just pick your spots with the portal. Yeah, as Matt said, as long as that staff's there, like it's hard to have anything but faith in UConn being awesome going forward.
And remember, just because there's so much familiarity with these coaches, like UConn, even when they've been dominant, they weren't like a juggernaut all throughout conference play because that's sort of the familiarity that the opposing coaches have with the Hurley and staff and their playbook. But if you take away that Maui disaster, I mean, it was all in all a pretty great year, fully healthy. Like not obviously back to back, but again, high floor, and I think a pretty high ceiling too.
Yep. Number 15 offense in the country, most efficient offense in the Big East. And that was without McNeely for a month. And they were still that good offensively. Yep. They just couldn't really figure things out defensively. Ball, not a great defender. Mahaney didn't help on that end. But they're bigger next year and, just need to foul less, which also leads to don't be turnstiles on the perimeter.
Yeah, Demery's going to be great for that defensively, but no Samson Johnson. You take away a little bit of rim protection. You still have Reed. Caravan is actually a pretty good shot blocker. Just kind of gets his hands and everything. But anyways, UConn's going to be fine. Hurley, the whole coaching staff, the roster for next year looks great. You're UConn fans. You're UConn. Number 4, Xavier. Kai and Jim. Yeah, we both nailed this team. Number 4, sure. Yep. They were a lot worse than we definitely thought. Now, I did caveat last season, the hype was getting out of control. We literally heard people call this team top 10 in the preseason. I know people said like dark horses to win the title. A lot of people took them to win the Big East. The hype got a little too far. We were really concerned about the defense. We thought it could be like really bad and the offense could be super elite, but bad on D. Ironically, Jim, they finished really close on offense and defense in the national rankings. 47th on offense, 48th on defense. The defense was actually not that terrible. This team just couldn't really win. It just felt like a strange, I don't know, the juice wasn't there, Jim. I saw a couple juice games from Conwell. Otherwise, I didn't feel a lot of like hype when I watched Xavier play basketball last year.
Yeah, I had this team wrong in terms of balance. Like I got a lot of over-unders wrong betting them early in the season because I thought there's gonna be a lot more points in their games with them being soft defensively and elite offensively, and that just wasn't the case. I didn't really understand why. I still don't. Looking at the roster, I don't get how it ended up coming out that way as a team. Maybe that's a credit to Miller for building up the defense better, but there's so many offensive weapons. I thought they would score at a much higher rate. I mean, they were top 5 in the country in 3-point percentage and still were barely top 50 on offense. Struggled to get easy buckets. Fremantle, the only real inside threat, and I think a lot of their guards can't get to the rim. As much as I love Conwell, that's not really his strength. So getting easy baskets eluded them a little bit. They did have that awesome comeback in the first 4. We enjoyed that, Kai. We took that in Las Vegas. But Matt, I don't know. I would say it was a kind of an underperforming year for them last year. I was not overly impressed, and now Miller's gone. You're starting over with Baby Patino. Weird roster to start off. I'm not sure where the clear Big East caliber players are. I don't know. It's Xavier, good support. Cincinnati's a great basketball town, loves both its squads, but I'm kind of like lukewarm on where the Muskies are at.
It's weird. So similar to UConn, I think this team had flipped a switch late last year. Like they were playing really well heading into that Texas game. But I still think this was the margin for error with this team was a lot smaller. I don't think we took a close enough look at their defense, which you're right. I think the lack of there wasn't bona fide athletes on this team, crazy rim protectors, and I think that showed defensively at the rim, and I think it showed with the inability to get to the rim. That's kind of why they sort of waddled through the first half of the season. And now it's in a weird spot because now Miller goes to Texas. And Jim, you kind of had me questioning, my Sean Miller opinion. Maybe I don't know. I'm not going to just rush to new conclusions here, but maybe he's not like the bulletproof coach that I thought. So it's like, okay, so now you get a new coach, maybe a reset here. And I like Patino, but it does feel like a lateral type of hire at best, and that might be friendly. People are probably saying, "Oh, Miller's way better than Patino." Like, well, maybe, but I guess kind of my final thought is, would you rather have Chris Mack or Richard Pitino at Xavier? Because I know the Chris Mack stuff was real, and that sounded like they kind of dovetailed to Pitino there. Very interesting, again, inflection point. Unlike Creighton, who I feel better about as a fan long term, Xavier, I'm a little more uneasy, I think, about what the next 3 to 5 years hold for my program.
That's a good question. I don't know. Toss up, I suppose, between Richard Pitino and Mac.
Let me spin it, Matt. Would you rather have Alan Huss or Richard Pitino?
I like Pitino a lot. I'm going to go Huss, but I think I like both a lot more than the average perception. So for me, I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I would go Huss, but I like Pitino. I did.
Huss feels like we don't quite know. Like Richard Pitino's been in a power conference team.
It's a projection decision.
Some at-large bids. Yeah, I don't know. That feels it's a little harder to compare there. I think I'd probably rather have Chris Mack, Kai.
Yeah, I would go Chris Mack.
Yeah.
Just run it back, maybe. I think he wanted it too. I don't know. I know Norlander and Parrish had some of the scoops on that. But,
Xavier fans, don't look at your roster because, it's not good. It's not good.
I think they're all like talking themselves into it. They're like, we've got a bunch of these like high ceiling swings. And I'm like, yeah, but if you don't have any bedrock foundation, you need like 7 of those to be Big East caliber. And I don't know if they're going to be. So
this is
scary.
Yeah. We'll talk about it later, but okay. Number 5, Marquette. Jim nailed it. Number 5 for him in the preseason podcast. Hey, we wanted one more transfer for this team. Gosh darn it. Or one transfer period. And we were right. This team was a transfer short. Now, they started off really well during the beginning of the season. It was like, wow, Marquette might be like as good as ever coming out of the gates, winning at Maryland, beating Purdue, like smoking Purdue. It was like, is this team like actually better than last year somehow? And then eventually they came back down to earth, especially in Big East play. Really fell down. This team peaked at number 9 in KenPom, ended up finishing 29th. Of course, still made the tournament, but it wasn't the bulletproof season that we've seen the last couple of years from this team. We were worried about the defense a little bit. It was actually pretty good. and is actually better than the offense, which is kind of nuts. And that, of course, Cam Jones was phenomenal, as everyone expected. He truly was an All-American level player.
Oh, sorry, me or Jim?
You, Matthew.
Jim, me. Okay. Yeah, this team bummed me. I really was like going to bed. It's like, no, we're gonna be fine without Kolick and Oso, but it turns out those guys were like super important. And I just felt like as I watched this team throughout the season, so much was on Cam Jones' shoulders. I just think he started to look worn down. And Chase Ross was terrific. But I just thought that Jim, you said this preseason, right? They were a guard short, right? Had they been fully healthy, but still, even then, it's like I think a portal ad would have done a little bit of good. I thought that was sort of the lack of they needed one more bullet in the chamber. I think that's what I'm trying to say here, and that's what kind of I think limited their ceiling. And we saw this play out over the course of the year.
Yeah, I think once they knew Sean Jones' recovery wasn't going well or could go into the year, it's like you got to find a guy that can eat some minutes, move Cam Jones off the ball a little bit, give him a chance to be a scorer instead of the scorer and the creator for everything. And he was fantastic, but they clearly tailed off. And they started 5-1 in their Ken Palm Tier A games, and then they won one the rest of the season. They went like 1-8 the rest of the way, and the only one they won was against Xavier by 2 in the Big East tournament. Like they didn't beat anybody really after January 3rd. It was like just not an exciting team. Our guy Nick Engel, our friend that's a Marquette fan, was like, this team isn't good anymore. They just completely lost the juice down the stretch. Now I don't think that dooms them as a program, but man, they don't have like a clear All-American next year the way they did with Jones, and they've outright stiff-armed the portal once again. And I don't get that because Shaka's some of his best players, Kolek, Omax, have been transfers. I don't think fully ignoring it is the right way to go. It's smart to rely on internal development and keep your players. Retention is good, but Kai, you got to fill in the blanks around him. I think even Matt Painter has realized that.
I totally agree. Next year, I expect this team to be pretty good, but not elite like it was 2 seasons ago and 3 seasons ago. Your Marquette, your top 5 for now, until Villanova starts rolling, and we'll see if they do under year 1 of the Kevin Willard era. They finished 6th. Hey, Kai had them 6th, and that was actually a hot take at the time. I think Jim agreed with me on the podcast. The hate went way too far. So opposite of Xavier, the hate for Villanova in the preseason was insane.
Well, people said this was like not a top 100 team.
Not top 100.
Like, come on.
The worst team in the Big East. Now, to be fair, a lot of that was said before Wooga Poplar got added to the roster, and that roster did look pretty bleak, but Eric Dixon was, incredible. Even before the season, I think people thought so. And Neptune had like a top 30-ish team the year before. How about this call from Jimmy Root? Maybe this roster finishes 55th or something. Well, they finished 56th, Jim, so you were wrong. By 1 spot. Pretty good.
Damn it.
Pretty good.
Ah.
Jameer Brickus, by the way, was a lot better than I expected. He was like flaming hot from downtown. And we were correct, Jim, on being skeptical on Neptune. And he got fired for it. And now we got Willard in the hot chair. Thoughts on Villanova?
Yeah, I think they made the right move at coach. Clearly was not hitting the potential of his teams, and you just felt it when you watched. You're like, man, they're not making the right plays. It sometimes feels robotic. They have a guy as good as Dixon, and they can't get to at-large territory. That was a problem. Villanova, another team to go with Marquette, to go Xavier, that I just whiffed on the balance, the way I thought the team would be. I thought this team would be solid defensively and one-man band offensively. Instead, they were really good on offense and outside the top 100 on defense. And I thought Blotchy would give them a little more rim protection. I thought they'd play bigger, and that would help the defense, maybe hurt the offense. Nope, not the case, Matthew. I was surprised by that tilt. But yeah, I think I said like, if last year's roster that was really good finished 37th, this year's roster that's a little less good, 55th. Boom, 56th, right outside the tournament. I thought we hit that one on the head. And moving on was the right move. I just worry about the roster. Willard didn't do a great job in the portal this year, and it doesn't have the energy of a new hire that a lot of different schools do. Like bringing in a new name to replace the guy that felt stale, it doesn't feel like Villanova has that, and that's a bummer. You want that when you get a new coach. You want the excitement. I don't know if the main line's got it right now.
I agree, and I wonder if maybe because of that, Willard might be underrated. I'm not going to go that far because I actually think there was maybe a better hire or two out there. But still, you're out of the Kyle Neptune business, which is great. And that's where your mindset starts. It ends as a Villanova fan. I think I did have a good take on our All American. I said something crazy like Dixon could average like 25 a game or something. He averaged
Yep.
23.
Yeah, I think we almost had a board bet on it, and you were spot on.
Which
You were the right one.
good take me. But in hindsight, that was sort of, I think, the double-edged sword with this team is like, wow, this team was really individual reliant, and I think kind of speaks to the lack of team cohesion, which really showed up on the defensive end. Which I think, yeah, like you said, Jim, kind of caught us by surprise. Whatever, that's all done. A lot of players made a lot of money, cashing big checks from the Nova NIL machine. Congrats to them. And now it's a new dawn and a new day in Philly. And the Pope has your back. So
and the Pope,
nice
yes. We'll be praying
touched
with you,
by
Villanova. Yes, Villanova and St. John's had the same amount of top 30 wins last season. Two each.
That's wild. That's wild. Little sorry, pour one out for NIT Stu, who has enjoyed having his Villanova Wildcats in the tournament the last couple of years. I don't know if that'll be the case going forward with Willard, who is a floor raiser, but with that roster, it could be right back in there in 2026.
Agreed. Okay, guys, we've come to the point of the podcast where we weren't really right in the preseason. It's Georgetown.
Yeah.
It's number 7, Georgetown. Yeah, too low. Jim and I had them both last in this conference. We picked DePaul over them. We were really concerned about the defense because in 2024 it was freaking brutal. But they improved a lot. They were top 60 in the country. They were number 5 in the Big East. Micah Peavy turned out to be an absolute demon on the ball defensively. Sorber turned out to be incredible. And first game, like Matt said, first game I saw Sorber like actually play. I was like, oh, okay, this guy is like a pro. He's fantastic. But we rightly called out the offense. We had concerns about my turn, your turn. It was 139th in the country. It was number 9 in the Big East. Just wasn't very good. But I'll admit it. Georgetown was way better than I thought, Jim. So congrats to Ed Cooley for sort of, I guess, taking the program a little bit further out of the muck and towards relevancy.
Yeah, it's a little damning with faint praise, but like, you were better than Cooley's first year.
Yeah.
Congrats. Yeah. Way to go. I wish we had said Kaya forecast for where we thought they would land nationally, because I think we probably would have said around 100th.
Right.
And they were 90th. Like, I mean, were you that much better? Are you pumped that, okay, Seton Hall sucked and you were better than DePaul? Like, you get to champion that. Congratulations. I don't know. Again, they were outside the top 80 when Sorber got hurt. So I don't want to hear that as like the reason everything didn't work out. With Sorber being amazing and Micah Peavy taking a huge creation leap, and you getting pretty solid offensive seasons, okay, from Epson Mac, you still had no chance at net large, like completely drawing dead for that. The depth of the roster was a real problem. Didn't build it out very well. Never liked Fielder, Williams, Burks. They didn't think that was like Big East caliber guys, and it didn't work out. But Matt, there is at least an upward trajectory. Cooley is a known floor raiser. We've invented the Cooley zone for a reason. Average finish, Kai, we said on the podcast at Providence was 59th. And I could see him getting right back to that range eventually, but he's got to continue accumulating more talent, get a little older on the roster. And if Sorber goes pro, I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, I'll say it. I've been out on Ed Cooley at Georgetown for over a year now. I just don't think it was the right fit. I think the circumstances in which he left Providence didn't have him in the right headspace to like take on this job with a ton of fervor and enthusiasm. I also think his entire success blueprint at Providence is not how you can build anymore in the current NIL portal era. And I think he's stuck between no man's land between like, I want to build, develop, groom my young men into multi-year players and, have all these 6'6", 6'7" positionless wings and defend at a high level. And that's kind of the gritty physical mentality that we want to have. But like, he just hasn't had that at Georgetown. And I think the only reason last year went okay for him was Thomas Sorber, frankly. So just because you absolutely struck gold with Sorber, I'm not going to all of a sudden be more bullish on how I view you at this new destination. So I remain stubbornly bearish on Cooley at Georgetown, and I think Sorber just basically covered that up in some part last season. That's my take, Kai.
Strong words from a strong man. I like you going strong in a negative fashion. This is nice, because usually Georgetown fans focus their ire on me and Jim. But now
Sure do.
Matthews in the crosshairs of Georgetown. This roster doesn't look that bad next year. Just putting that out there for feelers.
Are you saying that with or without Sorber?
Without Sorber, I don't think it's that bad. That bad.
Okay.
The Julius guy
That
is not very good, by the way, and we called that correctly. At least
yeah,
to
that's
start.
another one where every international guy isn't good.
Right.
So yeah,
It's at least older. Last
it's
year
a
was
much
young
better
team.
backcourt. It's a higher floor.
Higher
The
floor.
guards are
Yeah,
better, much
it's
better
older.
defensively.
They were
but
young last year for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we move on to Providence. We're mature on this podcast. We're not going to take a victory lap, okay? But Providence finished 8th. 4 spots inside the top 100. Providence fans are starting to turn on Kim English. Oh, no. You hate to hear that. Now, big caveat that we will admit. Yeah, Bryce Hopkins was hurt the entire year. Yes, that matters a ton. And Providence fans should absolutely be screaming that to the podcast, to the screen, whatever. Jim and I both had this team higher than 8th in the preseason. I had him 7th. Jim had him 6th. And we thought the defense would be at least good, but it was 134th. If English's calling card defense fails, you see the result. This team was just bad. Wesley Cardette, yes, he wasn't going to be your guy last year. He was coming from Chicago State. He was largely ineffective. Essendoko, Jim, here's what we said about Chris Essendoko. I said, I don't like the vibes I'm getting from St. Joe's fans who are very happy that he's gone. Jim says, yeah, I just don't really like him. And we were correct. He was freaking horrible for this team.
He's bad. He's
Horrible.
like the idea of him is better than what he is. He gets out there and you're like, oh, this isn't working.
Yep.
Why? Oh, I don't
Every
want him on the
St.
court.
Joe's fans could have told you that was going to be a bad idea. Like, just that's an eye test versus
Reality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Anyways, Matthew, I'll stop on Providence. But it wasn't a good year. They're 12-20. It was brutal. Kim and the press conferences were just like depressing. What are your thoughts on Providence?
Yeah, I mean, Bryce Hopkins, I think you have to. I'm not going to give last year a mulligan or an asterisk, but I do think that really the problem was that English's fault was that I think this team let the Hopkins thing turn and spiral into making a situation worse. I think they could have been more competitive, more consistently, even with the guys that they had. I know they had a lot of kind of small injury that kind of had a cumulative effect that also held this team back. But like Hopkins is so important, and I think he was such a key part of this roster build on both ends. However, I think that's part of that's the risk you take when you sign a guy who's got injury history coming in, and you kind of center your team around one guy that's such a high leverage piece. I just think that more and more of the smarter teams, in my opinion, in portal construction, balance is key, and you cannot put all your chips in one basket because last year I think this is a key take. You lose one star and it all spirals, and then the whole season's a disaster, and then now you have no momentum going into next year. Your NIL dollars start to taper off, and then people start calling. So lesson for Kimmy, I'm not a Kimmy guy. I'm more in on him than you guys are, but that was a big lesson learned for him last year. I think you got to balance, spread the wealth in terms of your roster leverage, I guess.
How in on him are you?
I just don't think he's like
more than
a bad
Providence.
coach. I think he
Well, I do. I do.
I think he maneuvered his way into a job that he probably wasn't quite yet qualified for. Like, if you're a Providence fan, would you rather have Tony Skinn right now than Kim English? Like, yeah, right. Ironically, but still, I don't think he's as disastrous of a coach as you Mizzou haters seem to think. I still don't think he's in the upper 8 coaches of this league though right now. But
He's
again,
bottom 2, right?
Like,
who's he better than?
Yeah, maybe bottom 10. Okay. I'd rather have Holtman,
Richard
I think.
Pitino, Kevin Willard, Chris Holtman.
Yep.
Ed Cooley. Are you taking him over Cooley? Maybe.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I'll take Cooley. Buy it. Yeah, I'll take Cooley. Thad Matta at this age, you can maybe talk me into. No, he might be the
only
worst
like
coach in the East.
61. That Matta's he's not that
surprisingly
old.
young.
Okay, you're right. No, you're right. I'm just now kind of processing here. This is the worst coach in the Big East. I think I'm prepared to say that. You're right.
I actually don't think Providence fans are going to be that upset about that. I think
no, it's right. It's the right take.
His tact or lack thereof in press conferences, lack of self-awareness, some of that stuff, I think really got on their nerves. And that's how you end up losing like 11 of their final 12. It was really bad. They just kind of the wheels fell off, and maybe you right the ship next year. And I think he's recruited decently well, and that's given them some hope. But how much is recruiting freshmen worth at this point? You've got to be digging out of the portal to turn things around. So yeah, Kai, I'm not going to call him a dead man walking next year, but I think it's circling the drain a little bit. It's bad right now.
Just remember real quick from a program, they were 11-2 on Christmas 2 years ago. Hopkins got hurt, I think, in that Butler game this 2 years ago. So, and then from there, the rest of the season, they went 2-4 to start Big East play, roll it into last year. The Hopkins thing continues. I just think the Hopkins, just detaching himself from Hopkins is probably a good thing. I don't know if that's going to mean they're going to win games, but I think that's probably a good thing because it's just been so tethered to like that circus.
Yeah, and you're not building your any team around him. Like even coming into this
year, will
he play?
Will he not play? I don't know. Because there's like this whole his camp's holding him out. What I don't know. So I'm glad he's removed himself from that. That's probably for the better.
A truer test of Kimmy's ability this year. That's fair.
If you're not Providence fans, you'll be right back in the Cooley zone next year. I guarantee it. That's between 40th and 80th in the country.
Probably with Ed Cooley in Georgetown.
That's a guarantee. Okay, number 9, Butler. Preseason talk. I had him 8th. To be fair, they were 7th in KenPom. Jim and I both agreed they had a narrow range. There wasn't a lot of excitement in terms of like a ceiling. There wasn't much concern in terms of floor, like fading down to like 10 or 11. We were a little bit mean to Landon Moore, but Jim, I think it's a little bit justified. I called him.
It's super justified.
I called him the most whatever player in the nation. Jim said he is a human shrug. It is confusing why he was rostered.
Yeah, I think our guy Kyle B in the chat also was like, why does this guy play on a power conference team? I mean, sub 10% shot rate, doesn't make shots when he does, not like a particularly effective defender. It's just an odd piece on a Big East team.
Yeah, this team could have been a lot better, I think. The start to the year was really good. They beat SMU, Northwestern, Mississippi State. They had some good players, and really, McCaffrey had a good season. Bizjack had a good season. And Telford and Brooks had kind of good seasons too. The defense was just horrible, and that's kind of what their downfall was.
Yep.
The problem with
anybody. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yes, I think Butler and DePaul had kind of the same problem. Quasi mid-major all-star-ish rosters that when you put them against legit teams, it was sort of exposed. I thought this team looked unathletic in some games. They were long, like they were tall. I mean, kind of like Utah, like a lot of long limbs out there, but like just not very quick or agile for sure. And I think that's what was exposed. You know, they beat Eastern Michigan by 1 million. They won those first 3 games by like a combined 150 points. Like, wow, East Tennessee State, pretty impressive by Butler, and then lose by 20 Michigan State.
You're looking at the wrong year.
They lost the second
of the year to Austin P at home.
Yeah. That's right. So even that Missouri State game was like they battled with Missouri State and it was like, what? And then that sort of set the tone. I guess they did win those 2 neutral site games. Those were at that was like the
huge wins.
That was at that was like the hockey rink in Arizona State or something like that. Those are stupid. At the MT games are always weird. I never give people credit for those. I don't know. That's my Butler take, Jim. Kind of similar to DePaul. I just think too many mid-major all-stars, and I think it started to catch up to them by conference play.
Yeah, I think their best outcomes last year were if they could like turn it into a shooting contest and win some of those because they were getting out-athleted by everybody. And that's, at home, they got cold against Austin P and they lose. Against North Dakota State, they play a scorching hot shooting team, at least in the first half, and they lose that one. They just couldn't out-athlete mid-major teams ever. It was a real problem for them. And then you get up against better teams in the Big East, even though it wasn't a great Big East, and it's hard for them to find a higher gear. I mean, they didn't beat their Big East wins were Seton Hall, DePaul, Seton Hall, Providence, Georgetown, DePaul. Like they didn't beat any of the top 7 teams, and that kind of checks out.
Also, Thad Matta has not had a real point guard. He needs a point guard. I think it's been a big Butler fans would point to that. I think is their primary issue. They've not had a point guard, like a real point guard, and they're
I don't think they have money either. Like their basketball budget was low. I don't think they have NIL money either. It's like bargain shopping in the Big East is tough.
Boy, look at Butler's roster for next year. Is talent down in college basketball next season as a whole? I think the answer is yes.
I think you guys have mentioned
lost
this
2
too.
classes, Kai. We lost 2 classes.
Every Big East team, like, all right, I'm not very good.
I think it's just not as deep. I think that's the bigger takeaway. It's like guys are like a guy or 2 short away from really having to grasp for straws with some depth. I think that's gonna be the big dynamic every team deals with is you just have a guy or 2 less you didn't have last year in your back pocket.
Tell you what, Kimmy and Providence, next year if you don't finish top 6 or top 5, you got to say goodbye because that's your opportunity. Your roster looks a lot better than a lot of these teams. Okay, Number 10, DePaul. Jim, both of us had DePaul over Georgetown. Okay, that didn't work out. But We both had him out of the basement, and we're going to spin zone it and say, great take. We liked the way Chris Holtmann allocated his resources. We know DePaul didn't have a lot of them, and for what he had, he brought in some pretty good additions. Some big swings from the transfer portal, from the low and mid majors. We thought the downside was going to be defense. Yep, it was dead last in the Big East. Jim hit the nail on the head with it. It's a high variance team. Of course, they relied on shooting a lot. We weren't very kind to CJ Gunn. He ended up being kind of their engine, I suppose. He still wasn't that great, but he wasn't nearly as bad as I think, at least I thought he was going to be. Ended up being their highest used player. So, Jim, thoughts on DePaul?
Yeah, Gunn's interesting. He made 30% from three. I said he was a shooter that can't shoot. Still didn't really shoot it. And like early in the year was just kind of a fringe piece, but then became like a 36-minute a game guy towards the end, especially when Enright got hurt, who was like their instigator, firebrand type guy. If you get fully healthy seasons from Enright, and Skogman also really struggled with injuries, I thought that was a big downfall for them. A lot of these Big East teams that tumbled had injury issues, except for the one team we have yet to discuss. But overall, decent. Like you felt like there was competition when DePaul was on the court. Like they could at least bother some of the better teams if they got hot. That was never really the case under Stubblefield. So Matt, I think it's trending up a little bit despite their meager resources, and I think there's at least a little momentum behind DePaul.
Yeah, I agree. It's just I can't. I wish there was more fact-based evidence of last year in terms of like the results to point to that, because in a league when the league really sunk, like I thought this team could have gone 6-14 at least, right? I know the injuries hurt, but still, like so with Butler against Villanova, against Xavier, like they looked like a less talented team. Still, they
And
had
they
some
triple
depth.
swept Georgetown. They triple
They
swept
did,
Georgetown.
yeah, they did. Sorry, Ed.
So we're right.
Again, it just. I agree though. I think the vibes are better. It's like if they feel like it's a real coach and the hiring process wasn't so disjointed and like seems somewhat competent. So just from that standpoint, like I think people believe in Holtman. I think the program has more optimism. But I would like to have seen a few more wins last season to kind of capitalize on a somewhat watered down Big East landscape to really feel good about it going forward.
Hey, best of luck next year to Paul. Chicago's Big East team playing possessed. We'll be watching you closely next year. We've reached the basement. It is Seton Hall. You can call this one also a bit of a miss. I had him ninth in the preseason. I called him a tier above Georgetown and DePaul. That was very incorrect because this team didn't even finish in the top 200. 204th, it was ugly from the start. It was ugly through the middle, and it was ugly to the end. We knew the talent was severely lacking. We knew Yassine Toomey was not the answer in the front court. The silver lining was supposed to be the sophomore class with Garvey Dual, with Scotty Middleton coming in, Isaiah Coleman taking the jump. Jim called him a breakout candidate, and he really did play a lot better last season. Dual and Middleton were kind of just nobodies, unfortunately.
Yeah. I also think I said nice things about Alik Bay, and he was bad.
Yeah, and the rim protection ended up being a huge question. They're still top 90 on defense, but for Seton Hall to be good, they need to be like top 50, top 40 on defense. Jim, for Seton Hall.
Yeah, they couldn't score. Couldn't get easy baskets. Nobody that could get downhill and get to the rim. Not a single shred of an interior post threat. Like you're not throwing the ball to anybody on the block. Yalden did not work out at all. The Gus Bus off the rails, not helpful. So they end up playing Herring at center, who's at least like the most athletic of the group, but he's smaller. He's not as big as the big guy for Providence, whose name I can't pronounce. Unfortunately, I forget how it goes, but. Yeah, the defense wasn't quite there, and the offense was miserable. Chauncey Jenkins helped a little when he was around, and he got hurt, and it fell off a true cliff. I mean, they were competitive in that Charleston Classic. They beat VCU in OT.
VCU. Yeah.
Basically, we were worried that maybe that would end VCU's chances at that large. They did win the A10 tournament, but they were at least bothersome for Vanderbilt. They beat FAU. But through Big East play, man, it was bleak. They got blown out a lot. Games they were not in, and that is why you finish outside the top 200, Matt. I think Holloway's kind of figuring out the bargain shopping thing, but this is a team that's desperate for the revenue sharing so they can get closer to an even playing field.
Yeah, no money, no time. I think last year, Seton Hall fans, but this team had a ton of injuries. Like I feel like I've said that for a few teams now, but like a ton. And then they had that big, long, like month-long, like Rutgers-esque, like flu or stomach thing that was like the norovirus thing. Like there was a lot of stuff that just went against Shaw last year that turned what was probably not going to be a great year into like a disaster season. So again, a lot of times these power conference teams, it's just the margin for error is pretty slim, and when it goes south in a hurry. The roster looks better for next year. I know we just talked about coaches in the Big East. Kai,
Does it
if
look
you're
a
ranking
lot
them,
better?
what?
I don't know. Does it look a
It
lot
looks
better?
better to me. It does look better. It does. I'm famous last words, but like I still feel like Shaheen is clearly better than Kim English, no question. But like if you're looking at like in terms of ranking coaches in this conference, I think you have to look yourself in the mirror and think, okay, you know, do I love Shaw at this long term? I actually do. I think some people out there, I'm sort of citing the counterpoint. I think he's a perfect fit for a program that will never have real resources. I just think you kind of have to stay the course, and you're going to have some up and down years. That's just sort of the trajectory and the inevitability of Seton Hall. So I believe in Shaw. But I do think that narrative is starting to come to the forefront because of how bad last year went. But I still think Shaw can coach totally.
Oh, I agree. I think I think he usually will do better with resources than he did last year. I remember the start of that season. They barely beat St. Peter's at home. It was like, okay, my eyebrows raised. Then they lost to Fordham at home. Okay, I watched that game. That was brutal. Then lost to Hofstra on a neutral, who ended up being brutal. It's like, this team's really, really bad. Okay, I get it.
Even
now.
like 54 points against Wagner. Yes, they held them to 28, but it's like they didn't hit 60 points until OT of VCU game.
They won. Their only 2 wins in the Big East were overtime. They beat DePaul and somehow UConn in overtime in the Big East.
They always beat Danny Hurley once. That's what UConn fans will say.
They finished.
What I don't want to happen is I don't want this to be like a Minnesota situation where I think you have a good coach with no support, and then
I think
there's a booster circle that meets in a secret room and says, "Hey, we got this guy teed up, and we're going to bring in X million if we can get him." And then they sort of do the whole, "Okay, you're gone, and here's a new coach, and here's a bunch of money," and then you can just clearly say, "Oh, this guy's better than that guy," but in reality, we'll never know because the money was there. I hope it doesn't happen because Shaw is like Jersey, New York through and through, and I think he's a perfect fit for this job. Just give him some money, folks.
John Fanta's millions of dollars need to go towards the Seton Hall basketball program.
Yeah. I assume Fanta's donating. If he's not, I'm going to have to call him out publicly. But I believe he's contributing, kick back some of the bags.
Oh, come on. That man is the most Big J objective. He would never, mess with his objectivity while announcing
every Big East school gets a $5 bill.
Exactly.
Just a couple final stats, because I like to point out when teams are extremely bad or good. Seton Hall, 315th on offense. They were bottom 7 in the country in 2-point percentage, but they were also bottom 17 in the country in 3-point attempt rate. So it was never going to work out offensively for the Pirates. Okay, that does it, fellas, for the Big East. Look back, a year in review. Good job. We hope to have Matthew next year for the preview. Fittingly, he has left the screen right now. Let's transition to reviews, Jim, unless you have a final thought on the Big East.
Nope. Let's do it. Let's do the review.
We have one review from CJ Easterday, Elite Ball Knowers, obviously the best college basketball podcast, possibly the best podcast, period. That's high praise. He's been listening for 7 years, hasn't missed an episode. Would like to note that ever since the Weavers have partnered with Trilly in the Discord, his love for college hoops has grown even more than he previously thought was ever possible. Best money he's ever spent. Love to hear that. Alongside the deal of the century, Jim's handy roster sheet. Yes, Jim has a big roster sheet that you can buy for $20. Keeps track of all the transfers and all that jazz for you.
All 365 now. I got to add New Haven in, Kai. I got to get them in there.
Back up to 365. Hey, that's where we should be, right? He says, love and appreciate you guys. Thanks for putting in so much work and truly making the sport more enjoyable than it already is. He would add a 6-star if allowed. We need to call up Apple and say, allow a 6-star. So CJ can give us that. That'd be great. Yep. And he says he's also a passionate Duke fan who takes all of my open Duke hatred in stride. We appreciate that, CJ. Duke is becoming less hateable by the years.
Yeah, I love how much they're scheduling difficult teams. My frozen exterior towards Duke is starting to warm. Global warming around my Duke hatred too, Kai.
Yeah, and ironically, Matt's becoming less of a fan of Duke over the years. So it's almost like
just more impartial.
Nice,
more impartial
flip-flop there. Yeah. Okay, that does it. That was our reviews. That was our Big East podcast. Again, first of all, episode 400. Hooray for us.
Yeah,
We
thanks
are
for tuning in for 400
yeah,
episodes,
fantastic.
folks.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Next week we're off. We're on the island. We're in Dominican Republic celebrating
We're on
the
island
wedding.
time.
Island time. I cannot wait to be in the pool for every single day in that trip. We will be back the following week with another conference look back, most likely either the Big Ten or the Big 12, but we will announce it on Twitter and all that good stuff. Till then, cheers. Enjoy your weekend.